Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is The Prophet by Kahlil Gibran. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. When The Prophet was first published in 1923, the literary world may not have anticipated the profound and lasting resonance it would have across cultures, languages, and generations. Written by Kahlil Gibran, a Lebanese-American poet, philosopher, and artist, this slim volume of poetic prose has since been translated into over 100 languages and remains one of the most beloved spiritual classics of all time. Blending Eastern mysticism with Western literary form, The Prophet is not a narrative in the traditional sense. It's a tapestry of philosophical and spiritual reflections, voiced through the fictional prophet Almustafa as he prepares to leave the city of Orphalese after 12 years in exile. The structure of the book is deceptively simple. A man about to depart is asked by the townspeople to share his wisdom on the most fundamental aspects of human existence: love, marriage, children, work, joy and sorrow, freedom, and more. What follows is a poetic outpouring of insight, tinged with a quiet sadness and a deep compassion for the human condition. Gibran's language is symbolic, lyrical, and at times almost scriptural in tone, giving his messages a universal, timeless quality. Critically, The Prophet has sometimes been dismissed as overly sentimental or vague, but this hasn't dulled its popularity. Its aphoristic passages have found their way into weddings, funerals, and spiritual gatherings across the world. It transcends religious and cultural boundaries, offering an inclusive vision of spirituality that appeals to the soul's longing for meaning and beauty. Gibran's own background as a Maronite Christian living among Muslim, Druze, and Christian traditions, and later as an immigrant to the United States, informs the book's cosmopolitan spirit. Now, let us step into this allegorical farewell. The sea waits for Almustafa's ship, but before he leaves, the people gather to hear his final words, words that will echo like sacred music long after he is gone. It was early morning in the city of Orphalese, and the sea was breathing a slow, expectant rhythm. On the hill that overlooked the harbor, Almustafa, the chosen and beloved one, stood waiting. For 12 years, he had dwelt among the people of Orphalese, a stranger who had become a friend, an observer who had become a teacher. Yet always he had longed for the return of the ship that would carry him home to the isle of his birth, to the place of his deeper belonging. And now that ship had come. He stood poised between departure and memory, a man shaped by silence and longing. As the mist lifted from the sea and the sun's early rays touched the city's stone streets, word spread like wind through the olive groves. The prophet was leaving. And so, from their homes and temples, the people came, men and women, elders and youth, shepherds and merchants, each bearing within them a question, a sorrow, a hope. They gathered at the city gates where he would soon depart, and their hearts were heavy, for they had come to love him not as a mere teacher, but as a vessel of wisdom, a companion of the soul. As Almustafa descended from the hill, he moved like a man between two worlds. He did not walk quickly nor slowly, but with the deliberate grace of one who carries sacred truths. And when he arrived at the gates, a hush fell over the crowd, not from fear, but from reverence. It was the silence that precedes revelation, the kind of quiet in which even the wind seems to listen. Then from the crowd stepped Almitra, a seeress, a woman whose soul had often conversed with Almustafa's in the hush of evening or the stillness of dawn. She had long known he would one day depart, and though sorrow stirred in her breast, she did not weep. Instead, she spoke with a voice clear and calm, like the tolling of a distant bell. "Master, speak to us. Speak to us and give us of your truth. We will not let you go until you have shared with us what you have seen in the silence of your watching." And so Almustafa looked upon them, the people of Orphalese, and his heart softened with love, not a sentimental affection, but the fierce tenderness of one who has witnessed their pain and their joy, their struggles and their small triumphs. He raised his eyes to the sky, as though drawing strength from the heavens, and he spoke, not as one issuing commandments, but as one offering mirrors to the soul. The first to speak from the crowd was a woman who asked him to speak of love, and Almustafa answered, his voice steady as a flame that neither flickered nor faltered. "When love beckons to you, follow him, though his ways are hard and steep. And when his wings enfold you, yield to him, though the sword hidden among his pinions may wound you. For even as love crowns you, so shall he crucify you. Even as he is for your growth, so is he for your pruning." And the people listened, spellbound. His words did not comfort in the way soft blankets comfort the body. They seared, illuminated, awakened. He spoke of how love does not possess nor allow itself to be possessed. "Love," he said, "is sufficient unto love. To love someone is not to own them, but to stand beside them in freedom, as two trees growing not in each other's shadow, but in each other's light." His words echoed through the quiet air, and they fell not only on the ears of the people, but into the deep well of their hearts, where truth waits to be remembered. In those moments, the people saw not only Almustafa, but themselves, what they had hoped for, what they had feared, what they had forgotten. As his voice faded, there was no applause, only stillness. Then another stepped forward and asked him to speak of marriage. And again he answered, not from doctrine, but from vision. "You were born together, and together you shall be forevermore. But let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you." He spoke of how the pillars of a temple stand apart, and how strings of a lute, though separate, quiver with the same music. He did not promise that love would be easy, but he painted it as something sacred, not a binding of chains, but a weaving of two lives into a tapestry that breathes. As the prophet continued to speak, each subject invited another, like petals unfurling from the same flower of insight. And the people leaned in, not merely to understand, but to be transformed. In this first chapter of his farewell, Almustafa had already begun to part the veil between the seen and the unseen, the known and the eternal. And still, there was more to say. The ship waited, but so did the hearts of Orphalese, open and thirsty, ready to receive the rest of his vision before the sails were raised, and silence reclaimed him. From the quiet that lingered after his words on love and marriage, another voice rose, a man with hands calloused by years of labor. His eyes, though weary, held an earnest light. "Master," he said, "speak to us of children." And the prophet turned to him with a gaze both solemn and tender, as though peering not into the face of one man, but into the generations behind and ahead of him. He spoke slowly, each phrase like the stroke of a painter's brush across an unseen canvas. "Your children are not your children," he said. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. A hush rippled through the crowd, deeper than silence. He explained that children come through us, but do not belong to us. They dwell in the house of tomorrow, a place we cannot visit, not even in our dreams. The people listened as he likened parents to bows, and their children to living arrows shot forth. The archer, he said, bends each bow with his might so that the arrows may fly swift and far. To resist that bending is to deny the soul's purpose. And so, parents must not seek to mold their children in their own image, but allow them to grow as themselves, full of their own song and direction. A murmur of recognition stirred among the crowd, especially among the mothers whose hearts were both proud and bruised by the demands of letting go. His words did not offer consolation in the traditional sense, but liberation, a reframing of the ache of parenthood into something luminous and eternal. Then came a teacher, eyes bright with the fire of inquiry. "Speak to us of teaching," she asked, her voice light yet rooted. The prophet nodded, and once more his voice became the vessel of truth. He told them that no man can reveal to another that which already sleeps in the dawn of the other's knowing. A wise teacher does not fill the mind with their own thoughts, but rather guides the student to discover the wellspring within themselves. He compared the role of the teacher to that of a shepherd leading sheep to pasture, not to force them to graze, but to show them where the grass grows. The true teacher gives not of their wisdom, but rather of their faith and lovingness. The people looked at one another with softened eyes, as if seeing for the first time that wisdom need not be worn like a robe, but lived as a quiet offering. From the edges of the crowd came a young man, uncertain but compelled. "Speak to us of work," he asked, and the prophet smiled, recognizing in the man's voice the weight of fatigue and the thirst for purpose. "Work," he explained, "is love made visible. It is not merely a burden of survival, but a sacred act, a weaving of self into the fabric of the world." He spoke of building a house as though it were a temple, of tilling the earth as though it were the ground of the divine. Even the act of baking bread, he said, becomes holy if done with reverence and joy. But if one labors only in resentment or for gold alone, then they forge chains rather than meaning. Work should be an offering of one spirit, and in that, the laborer becomes the beloved of life itself. The crowd shifted in silence, the merchants and farmers among them contemplating their own calloused hands, perhaps seeing in them, for the first time, a kind of quiet poetry. The wisdom being shared was not new, but ancient and remembered, a truth their hearts had always carried, now spoken aloud. Then came a woman adorned with silver bangles, her posture both proud and burdened. "Speak to us of joy and sorrow," she said, and her voice trembled with the weight of her own unspoken losses. The prophet turned to her with deep compassion. He said that joy and sorrow are inseparable. When one sits with you at your table, the other is sleeping in your bed. You cannot experience great joy without having known sorrow. Just as the deeper the sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. He spoke of laughter rising from the same well as tears, and that it is in our moments of grief that we glimpse the heights to which we once soared. Joy and sorrow, he said, are not opposites, but twin lights cast by the same celestial fire. This truth settled over the crowd like dusk, soft and inescapable. Many felt seen in their pain and honored in their joy. A child then stepped forward, shyly. and asked without words, only with eyes. The prophet bent down and whispered something only the child could hear, and the child smiled, a smile that carried the lightness of being understood without explanation. That moment passed quietly, but it echoed in the hearts of all who saw it. And then another voice, this one older, seasoned like an oak tree weathered by time, asked about houses. The prophet raised his arms toward the city and spoke of homes, not as places of walls and roofs, but as the bodies of our greater selves. He urged the people to build their dwellings with love, but not to trap their souls within. Let there be spaces in your togetherness, he said again, this time referring not to people, but to the places they inhabit. He warned that over-attachment to walls and possessions dulls the spirit, and that a house should be a place of rest and release, not confinement. Your house shall not be an anchor but a mast, he said, and in those words was the secret of how to live, grounded, yet ready to sail. By now, the sun had climbed higher in the sky, casting golden light over Orphalese. The air had grown warmer, yet none stirred to leave. Each answer led to another question, each question another illumination. And through it all, the prophet stood calm and unshaken, his presence like a lighthouse, silent, strong, and ever guiding. The people were no longer merely hearing words. They were partaking in a communion of the Spirit, a remembrance of truths long buried beneath the noise of daily living. The prophet had not come to teach them anything new, but to awaken what they already knew in their bones. And still, they asked, and still he answered. As the warmth of the day deepened, and the city seemed to hold its breath in reverence, another man stepped forward from the gathered crowd. His robes were modest, his eyes contemplative, and he bowed his head slightly before he spoke. Speak to us of buying and selling, he said, his voice low but firm. The question shaped by years spent in the bustle of the marketplace, amidst haggling voices and the clinking of coin. The prophet looked toward the harbor, where merchants moved like ants over the docks, lifting crates, tying knots, weighing goods. He watched them for a moment, and then his gaze returned to the man, to the people, to the unspoken contracts of human exchange that bound their lives together. He said that it is in the giving and receiving that life itself is exchanged, and that when one trades with love and justice, they participate in the music of the world. But he also warned that to take more than one needs, or to sell with cunning and deceit, is to sell one's soul for gold that will one day scatter like dust. He reminded them that the earth is generous and will offer its bounty freely, if only we approach it with reverence. When you kill the hunger of another, he said, you feed your own soul. The crowd grew quiet with recognition. The truth in his words wasn't new, but long buried beneath the habitual rhythms of commerce and profit. Then a voice rang out, clear, direct, with the weight of command behind it. It was a soldier, his armor softened by age, his posture still proud. Speak to us of crime and punishment, he asked, and though the crowd murmured at the gravity of the question, the prophet did not hesitate. He spoke of justice not as a blade to be wielded, but as a balance that must be remembered. He said that we often judge others for the faults we fear in ourselves, and that when one among us falls, it is not he alone who falls but all of us, for we rise and fall together. He reminded them that even the righteous can stumble in the darkness of the moment, and that punishment should not be a satisfaction of wrath, but a means of restoration. There is a place within you where the guilty and the guiltless dwell together, he said. And like two sides of the same coin, they cannot be separated. He spoke of how a child who breaks a law is still a child of the community, and to punish with cruelty is to deny the very bond that makes us human. His voice did not call for leniency, but for depth, for justice that heals rather than wounds, that understands rather than condemns. As the soldier stepped back, visibly moved, a young woman with eyes like moonlight came forward. Her voice was hesitant, but carried a quiet strength. "And what of laws, Master?" she asked. "Speak to us of laws." The prophet's reply came gently, like the rustle of leaves stirred by a thoughtful wind. He said that laws are necessary when people forget to live by the Spirit. They are the crutches of the blind and the scaffolding of a society that has lost its inner balance. But the truly free, he said, walk not within written codes, but in harmony with the higher law, the law of love, of conscience, of mutual respect. He urged them not to place their faith in carved tablets or parchment scrolls, but in the truth that flows from within. In your longing for freedom, he said, you would cast off even the chains of reason, and yet you must understand that true freedom is not found in rebellion, but in alignment. He reminded them that when they love fully and act with justice and compassion, they require no law to restrain them. The crowd listened with an intensity that was more than attention. It was soul-deep listening. They were not simply absorbing his words. They were being unmade and remade by them. An elder then came forward, draped in linen and the wisdom of years. His voice trembled with reverence. "Speak to us of freedom," he asked. And with a long breath, the prophet closed his eyes and nodded. He said that people often speak of freedom as escape from duty, from labor, from rules and constraints. But true freedom is not in doing as one pleases, but in becoming one's truest self. You shall be free indeed, he said, not when your days are without a care or your nights without a want, but when these things girdle your life, and yet you rise above them naked and unbound. He told them that to long for freedom while still clutching to comfort and safety is to chase the wind with a net woven of sand. He urged them to shed the illusions that enslave them, the fear of judgment, the greed for possession, the craving for power. Only then would they walk not as captives of the world, but as its awakened participants. At this, a silence more profound than before settled over the people. The waves in the harbor seemed to still. The birds in the olive trees held their songs. It was as though nature itself leaned closer to hear the truth that had been laid bare. And in that silence, one final voice rose, a voice that trembled with both passion and shame. "Speak to us of reason and passion," the voice asked, and all turned to see a man with eyes that glowed like fire half quenched. The prophet spoke now in tones both gentle and fierce, for he saw in this question the eternal struggle within every heart. "Reason," he said, "is the rudder of the ship, while passion is the sail. One without the other is either directionless or without movement. It is in their balance that we find our way." He warned not to exalt reason and cast down passion, nor to let passion burn uncontrolled. Both must be honored, both must be guided. To rest in reason and to move in passion is to be at peace, he said. And in those words was the echo of every human life lived in search of that sacred harmony. As he finished, the air around them seemed altered, thinner, clearer, as if something holy had passed through and would not come again. The people stood still, held in a moment that felt outside of time. The prophet did not look tired, nor burdened by the weight of his words. He stood quietly, the morning now drifting toward noon, with the ship still waiting, and the questions still rising from the hearts of those who could not yet bear to let him go. The stillness following his words about reason and passion lingered like a soft mist, as if time itself had slowed to accommodate the weight of truth. But the people's yearning had not yet been satisfied, for there were still so many chambers of the soul left unopened, waiting for his voice to echo within them. And so, from among the crowd emerged a woman wrapped in shawls, her eyes deep with memory and fatigue. She approached the prophet slowly, as if approaching a shrine, and when she finally stood before him, she raised her face and asked, "Master, speak to us of pain." A silence fell, different from the ones before, heavier, as though each person gathered felt their own ache ripple beneath their skin at the very mention of the word. The prophet's eyes softened, and when he spoke, his voice did not rise but fell, gently, like rain over a parched land. He told them that pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses our understanding, that just as the stone must be chiseled to reveal the sculpture, so too must the heart endure sorrow to be made whole. He did not offer comfort by denying suffering, but by illuminating its place in the tapestry of life. Much of your pain is self-chosen, he said, not as blame, but as insight. For it is through pain that the self becomes visible to itself. He spoke of how the physician within us must wound to heal, how the bitter cup must be drunk to cleanse the soul. And yet, he said, do not fear pain, but look into its face with open eyes, for it is nothing but the shadow of joy. The deeper the sorrow carves into our being, the more joy it can hold. His words were not an escape from grief, but a guide through it. And many wept not from sorrow alone, but from the strange comfort of being told that their pain had meaning. After some time, a man stepped forward, youthful, but with a restlessness in his stride that suggested a battle between ambition and uncertainty. His question came quickly, as if released without permission. "Speak to us of self-knowledge," he asked, his voice steadying even as his hands trembled. The prophet turned his gaze toward the sea, where the waters shimmered beneath the midday sun. And then he spoke of the soul as a boundless shore that can only be discovered through solitude and stillness. He said that to know oneself is to become a mirror, not just for one's virtues, but for one's flaws, fears, and contradictions. The heart, he said, holds truths deeper than the mind can reach, and only through listening inwardly, in silence, can we approach that truth. He warned against seeking to define oneself solely through others' eyes, for that leads only to illusion. We are not what the world says we are what we become when no one is watching. The soul walks not in straight lines, he said, but in spirals, returning again and again to the same truths with deeper understanding each time. Self-knowledge is not a destination, but a lifelong unfolding. And then, as if drawn forward by an unseen string, a woman stepped out with a question that seemed to hum in the air even before it was spoken. "Speak to us of talking," she said, her voice light, yet solemn. The prophet smiled, as though amused by the dance of words, even as he prepared to speak on their nature. He told them that speech is half silence, that the words we utter are the ripples, but the silence between them is the ocean. "When you speak," he said, Do not let your thoughts run naked into the world, but clothe them in the light of consideration. He urged them to speak not just to be heard, but to reveal, to share, not to perform. He told them that hearts often speak to each other even when lips remain still, and that too many words can drown meaning. True communication lies not in endless expression, but in presence, in the spaces where nothing is said, and yet everything is understood. He asked them to let their words rise from love, not fear, from clarity, not confusion. A gentle breeze moved through the crowd then, as if the wind itself had come to listen. And in that moment, a man with a musician's fingers raised his voice, though it carried the vulnerability of one who rarely speaks. "And what of time?" he asked, looking not at the prophet but at the sky, as if trying to glimpse something beyond the sun. The prophet turned to him with a smile that seemed to span centuries. "Time," he said, "is not a river we are caught in, but an ocean we carry within us." "You measure time," he said, "but who can bind the vastness of the heart's moments? The past is not behind us, nor is the future ahead. It all lives within the soul's eternal now." He told them that they try to make time into a line, to cut it and divide it and bind themselves to clocks. But the spirit knows no such boundaries. When you dance, when you love, when you grieve, you are beyond time. And to live fully is not to chase minutes, but to become timeless. He reminded them that seasons do not rush their bloom, and that each moment is complete in itself, if we choose to be present within it. The people fell into stillness again, not the stillness of fatigue, but the stillness of a soul returned to itself. In this moment, they were not citizens of Orphalese, not farmers, merchants, teachers, or soldiers. They were simply human beings, stripped of role and title, standing bare in the radiant light of understanding. And the prophet stood with them, not above them. He had not demanded their reverence, nor asked for their praise. He had only answered. But in his answering, something in each of them had awakened. There was no applause, no fanfare, only a deep and sacred quiet, as though the entire city had become a single heart, beating softly in time with truth. The sun continued its gentle climb across the sky, casting soft shadows that swayed among the olive trees where the people had gathered, their faces etched with curiosity and quiet yearning. The prophet stood serene and attentive, as though he carried within him a wellspring of wisdom not his own, but borrowed from the breath of the earth and the song of the stars. And as the questions stirred anew in the hearts of those assembled, a man stepped forward, whose hands were roughened by labor, but whose eyes shone with a simple earnestness. "Speak to us of work," he said. The prophet's gaze lingered on the man, and then swept across the crowd, as if recalling all the hands that built homes, tilled fields, carried burdens, and shaped the very world itself. "Work," he began, "is love made visible." With these words, the crowd seemed to lean in closer, as if drawn by a secret revealed. He spoke of how each person's labor is not simply a task to be endured or a means to an end, but a sacred act that reveals the soul's purpose. When one works with joy, with intention, with the spirit of creation, the work itself becomes a prayer, a dance between the heart and the world. To work is to build a temple in the soul's landscape, he said, and every stone set with care becomes a monument to your existence. But the prophet did not romanticize toil as something always easy or pleasurable. He acknowledged that sometimes work is heavy, repetitive, filled with struggle and sacrifice. Yet even in the weary moments, there is dignity in the act of perseverance. If you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, he cautioned, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of those who work with joy. He urged the people not to measure themselves by the fruits of their labor alone, but by the love that pulses beneath their efforts. For work disconnected from love becomes a burden. When infused with love, it transforms into a blessing. Your hands shall minister to your body, he said, but your heart shall shape the soul of your work. The crowd absorbed these words, and a quiet ripple passed through them, some recalling moments when their work had lifted their spirits, others realizing the distance between duty and passion. The prophet smiled gently, and a woman with a child resting on her hip moved forward. Her eyes were soft but resolute, and her question came as a whisper, yet carried the weight of all mothers. "Tell us of children," she said. The prophet looked down for a moment, as if feeling the presence of children long gone and those yet to come. "Your children are not your children," he said softly, and the words fell like a delicate rain. "They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, they belong not to you." He told them that children are not possessions or extensions of the self, but are independent souls with their own destinies. To try to mold a child in the image of one's own desires is to imprison the wind or chase the sun. Instead, parents are stewards of a sacred trust, providing love, guidance, and shelter, while respecting the child's freedom to grow and become. He spoke of the paradox of love and letting go, that to love deeply is also to release completely. "You may give them your love, but not your thoughts," he said, "for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams." His words painted a vision of parenthood not as possession or control, but as devotion and respect, a relationship that honors the mystery and autonomy of each new life. The woman who had asked the question nodded slowly, understanding that love is both bond and liberation. Next, a man in worn robes, whose face carried the marks of wisdom and sorrow, stepped forward and asked about giving. "Speak to us of giving," he implored, and the prophet's eyes shone with a radiant light as he responded. "Giving is the purest expression of love," he said, "and the giver is richer than the receiver, for in giving, you open the door to abundance." He warned that giving should not be done out of obligation or for praise, but from a place of joy and generosity that flows from the heart's well. He likened giving to the river that flows freely to the sea, not asking who will drink of its waters. To give is to trust in the endlessness of the universe, to know that what you release will return to you transformed, though not always in the form you expect. There are those who give little of the much they have, and they give it for recognition, and their hidden desire makes their gifts unwholesome, he said. The prophet urged them to give as the tree gives its fruit, unhesitatingly and without regret, and to give without remembering, and to receive without forgetting. He taught that giving is an act of courage because it requires vulnerability, an opening of oneself to the flow of life. The crowd seemed to hold their breath at this teaching, sensing the invitation to embrace generosity not as a duty, but as a path to liberation. As the day wore on, the questions continued, each one peeling back a layer of the human experience. A young man with bright eyes asked about joy and sorrow. The prophet's response was tender yet profound. Your joy is your sorrow unmasked. The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. He spoke of how joy and sorrow are inseparable companions, two sides of the same coin. To deny one is to deny the other, and through embracing both fully, the soul learns its greatest lessons. He described sorrow as the sharp knife that opens the heart to love, and joy as the light that shines from the depths of that opening. His words offered no easy comfort, but a profound acceptance, a recognition that life's fullness is found not in avoidance, but in courageously inhabiting the whole of our feelings. The crowd felt moved, many wiping away tears, as the prophet reminded them that the same wellspring gives rise to both laughter and tears. As twilight began to soften the edges of the day, a woman stepped forward to ask about friendship. The prophet smiled warmly and said that friendship is a sacred dance between souls, a meeting of two hearts that respects freedom and honors truth. He said that friends are like two trees whose branches intertwine but whose roots remain separate, each nourishing the other without losing their own identity. True friendship, he said, is not possession or dependency, but a joyful recognition of the other's light. Let there be spaces in your togetherness, he said, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you. He reminded them that friends support without binding, rejoice without envy, and listen without judgment. The prophet's vision of friendship was one of mutual growth and respect, a partnership of spirits walking side by side, each enriched by the other's presence. As the first stars began to prick the darkening sky, the people looked upon the prophet with a reverence that was no longer born of curiosity, but of transformation. His words had moved beyond answers to questions. They had become a mirror reflecting their own souls back to them, revealing the truths they carried deep within. The prophet stood quietly, his heart beating in rhythm with the gathered souls, knowing that the journey had only just begun, that the questions would continue to come, and that the path toward wisdom was endless. But for this moment, beneath the stars and the olive trees, a sacred communion had been born, a shared breath of understanding and hope. As the gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and the sky deepened into the soft hues of dusk, the prophet remained a steady presence among the people. His gaze was calm, his spirit steady, and as the day's light waned, the crowd's thirst for understanding only grew stronger. One by one, voices rose, seeking wisdom on the many facets of life that tether the human heart to the world. Now, a man stepped forward, his face marked by years of searching and struggle. "Tell us of freedom," he said. The prophet's eyes seemed to look beyond the moment, into the very fabric of existence itself. "You shall be free indeed, when your days are not without a care nor your nights without a want and a grief, but rather when these things girdle your life, and yet you rise above them naked and unbound." His words hung in the air like a soft flame, illuminating the complexity of freedom in a way that stirred the crowd deeply. He spoke not of freedom as mere absence of chains or constraints, but as a liberation of the soul that occurs even amidst life's inevitable burdens. True freedom, he said, is not to be found in escape, but in the courage to face life fully, embracing its joys and sorrows alike without losing oneself to either. He warned against the illusion of freedom that comes from denying responsibility or fleeing from one's own life. "You shall be free when the desires that bind your spirits are no longer your masters, but your servants, he said. The prophet invited the people to see that freedom is an inner state, born from self-mastery and understanding, rather than the external circumstances that so often deceive and distract. A woman stepped forward then, her eyes steady and filled with a quiet fire. "Speak to us of pain," she said. The prophet's voice softened as he answered, "Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. Even as the stone of the fruit must break, that its heart may stand in the sun, so must you know pain." He described pain as an essential teacher, a force that strips away the superficial layers and reveals the deeper truths within. It is through pain that the soul is refined, its depth expanded, and its empathy awakened. "Much of your pain is self-chosen," he said, "for it is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self." The prophet acknowledged that pain is not welcomed nor sought out, but that it carries a sacred purpose, urging transformation and awakening. He spoke of the paradox that pain and joy are intertwined, each giving meaning to the other, each necessary for the fullness of life. The crowd was silent, many nodding with the recognition of wounds both hidden and open, feeling the healing power of this perspective for the first time. Then, a young man with eyes full of questions approached. "Tell us of self-knowledge," he asked. The prophet's smile was gentle but deep, as if welcoming an old friend. "Self-knowledge is the food of the soul. It is the mirror in which you see your true face, unmarred by the masks you wear before the world." He spoke of the difficulty and courage required to truly know oneself, to confront one's own shadows and light without fear or denial. "Your hearts know in silence the secrets of the days and the nights," he said, "but your ears thirst for the sound of your heart's knowledge." The prophet urged the people to seek their own truth within, to listen to the quiet voice that dwells beneath the clamor of thoughts and external judgments. "Only through this inward journey," he said, "can one live authentically and harmoniously." He warned, too, against the dangers of superficial knowledge or self-deception, urging honesty and humility in the quest for understanding. "The deeper that knowledge grows in you, the less you talk," he said, "for it is not in words, but in being that wisdom reveals itself." The crowd was captivated, many feeling a stirring within, as if an unseen door had been unlocked, inviting them to explore the landscape of their own souls. As the stars began to sprinkle the night sky, a woman with hands calloused from years of nurturing stepped forward. "Speak to us of friendship," she said quietly, her voice filled with longing. The prophet's eyes softened, and he spoke of friendship as a sacred bond that transcends proximity and possession. "Friendship is always a sweet responsibility, never an opportunity," he said. He described it as a mutual giving and receiving, a dance between souls that requires openness, trust, and respect. "True friendship," he said, "does not demand or cling, but allows space for growth and freedom." The prophet likened friends to two pillars supporting a shared roof, each strong and independent, yet together creating shelter and strength. "Let there be spaces in your togetherness," he said, "and let the winds of the heavens dance between you." He reminded them that friendship is a mirror reflecting one's own soul, a companion on the path of life, and a source of courage in times of trial. The crowd listened deeply, understanding that friendship is one of life's greatest treasures, requiring care and reverence. Next, a man, his face weathered by time, asked about time itself. "Tell us of time," he said. The prophet's voice took on a rhythmic cadence, as if echoing the eternal pulse of existence. "You would measure time the way you measure the wind," he said. "And yet time is not a thing to be measured, but a flowing river you must learn to swim." He spoke of the illusion of time as a rigid line of past, present, and future, reminding them that true living happens in the present moment, where all time converges. "Yesterday is but today's memory, and tomorrow is today's dream," he said. The prophet urged them to live fully in each breath, for time is the sacred vessel holding the fullness of life. He spoke against the anxiety that comes from fearing the future or clinging to the past, urging trust in the unfolding of life's mystery. "Let your moments be ripe and full," he said, "like the fruit hanging from the tree, ready to fall in its own season." The crowd felt the weight and lightness of these words, sensing the freedom that comes from releasing the illusion of control and embracing the flow of time as a sacred gift. As the night deepened, a woman stepped forward, her eyes reflecting the flickering torchlight. "Speak to us of love," she said, her voice trembling with the weight of all the questions love inspires. The prophet's smile was radiant, and his words unfolded like a song. "Love gives naught but itself, and takes naught but from itself," he said. "Love possesses not, nor would it be possessed, for love is sufficient unto love." He spoke of love as a force that frees rather than confines, that expands the heart and soul. He described love's paradoxes, how it can bring great joy and deep pain, how it requires courage and surrender, how it is both a flame and the air that feeds it. "Love," he said, "is the bridge between souls, the healing balm for wounds, the eternal song of the universe." The crowd was hushed, many feeling the truth of his words deep within their own hearts, as if a veil had been lifted and the essence of love revealed in its purest form. The prophet's voice carried the promise that love, in all its forms, is the very heartbeat of existence, and that to love truly is to touch the divine. As the moon rose high above the olive grove, the people remained gathered, their spirits touched and their minds awakened. They knew this night would linger in their memories, a sacred time when a prophet's voice had spoken to the deepest chambers of their souls. The night grew deeper, and the stars sparkled like distant fires in the endless sky, casting a soft glow over the olive grove where the people had gathered. The prophet's presence seemed to mingle with the gentle hum of the evening, and his words flowed like a river, steady and calming, filling the hearts of those who listened. One by one, they posed their questions, each eager to drink from the wellspring of wisdom. A woman stepped forward, her eyes glistening with unspoken sorrow and hope alike. "Speak to us of sorrow," she implored softly. The prophet's gaze softened, touched by the weight of such a question. He spoke not of sorrow as a mere sadness, but as a profound and necessary passage in the journey of the soul. "Your sorrow is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding," he said, echoing the idea that pain and sorrow are the teachers that strip away illusion and reveal deeper truths. He invited them to embrace sorrow as the companion to joy, intertwined in a sacred dance. "Much of your sorrow is self-chosen," he said gently, "for it is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self." He explained that sorrow holds the power to awaken compassion and humility, expanding the soul's capacity for love and empathy. In sorrow's depths, one finds the seeds of renewal, the fertile ground where transformation takes root. The prophet urged them not to flee from sorrow or numb it with distraction, but rather to welcome it as an essential thread woven into the fabric of life. The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain, he said, weaving together the paradox that life's darkest moments often lead to the brightest revelations. As the crowd absorbed these words, a man of humble appearance but keen intellect asked, "What do you say of reason and passion?" The prophet's eyes lit with a quiet fire. He described reason and passion not as enemies locked in eternal battle, but as partners in the dance of life, each necessary and incomplete without the other. Reason, he said, is the stable vessel that guides and contains, while passion is the roaring flame that ignites creativity and vitality. Reason, ruling alone, is a force confining, he warned, and passion, unattended, is a flame that burns to destruction. The balance between the two is what allows one to live fully and wisely, neither coldly detached nor recklessly consumed. He spoke of the delicate harmony that arises when reason and passion work together, when the mind listens to the heart, and the heart tempers itself with wisdom. In this unity lies the fullness of human experience, the sacred wholeness of being alive. The people felt the truth of this balance within themselves, recognizing the tension and longing that often defines their inner lives, and grateful for the insight that there can be peace between these forces. A young woman with eyes full of dreams then asked about beauty. The prophet smiled, his expression gentle and profound. "Beauty is not in the face, beauty is a light in the heart," he said. He spoke of beauty as something transcendent, a reflection of harmony and truth that shines forth from within. He cautioned against the shallow chase for outward appearances, reminding them that true beauty arises from the soul's alignment with goodness, kindness, and authenticity. The beauty of a woman or a man is not the garment they wear, but the grace with which they walk through life. He described how beauty can be found in the simplest acts of kindness, in the courage to be oneself, and in the openness to love and receive love. Beauty, he said, is a sacred fire that draws people together and elevates the spirit. The crowd listened, hearts stirred by the reminder that true beauty is a radiant force born not from perfection, but from vulnerability and truth. Next, an elder with a voice worn by time asked the prophet to speak of religion. The prophet's response was measured and expansive, acknowledging the power and peril of religious belief. "Your daily life is your temple and religion," he said. He spoke of religion not as an external doctrine, but as a living, breathing reality that unfolds in every action, every thought, every moment of connection. He urged the people to see beyond dogma and ritual, to find the sacred in the ordinary and the divine in the human. "Let there be no purpose in religion but to love and serve," he said, emphasizing that the heart of true religion is compassion and unity. The prophet warned against the divisions and conflicts that arise from rigid adherence to rules or the judgment of others. He called for tolerance and respect for the diverse paths that all lead to the same truth. "You have learned that you must be alone to be true," he said. "Yet you must learn that you can never be alone in truth." His words invited the people to embrace a spirituality that unites rather than divides, that elevates the human spirit and fosters peace among all. A man of great wealth then asked about giving. The The prophet's face shone with warmth. "You give but little when you give of your possessions," he said. "It is when you give of yourself that you truly give." He described giving as a sacred act that transcends the mere transfer of material goods. True generosity, he explained, is born of love and empathy, a flowing river that enriches both giver and receiver. "Give of your bread, but not of your heart," he said, "for it is only when you give of your heart that you give truly." The prophet encouraged them to give freely and joyfully, without expectation or attachment, understanding that giving is a reflection of the abundance that dwells within. Generosity is a way of life, a recognition that all we have is interconnected and shared. The crowd was moved, inspired to consider their own acts of giving and the spirit behind them. As the hours passed, the prophet's words continued to weave through the night, each teaching a gentle light in the darkness. His voice, calm and sure, carried the timeless wisdom that touches the deepest chords of the human experience. Finally, a young man, his eyes wide with the urgency of youth, asked about work. "What is the meaning of work?" he asked. The prophet's answer was clear and resonant. "Work is love made visible," he said. He spoke of work not merely as labor or duty, but as a sacred expression of the soul's creativity and purpose. To work with love is to transform the mundane into the divine, to build not only for oneself, but for the common good. The prophet urged them to approach their labors with passion and reverence, finding joy in the act of creation and service. He reminded them that every task, no matter how small, is a thread in the tapestry of life, contributing to the whole. "You work that you may keep pace with the earth and the soul of the earth," he said, highlighting the deep connection between human effort and the rhythms of nature. The people felt renewed purpose in these words, seeing their own work as a path to fulfillment and meaning. As the night surrendered to the first light of dawn, the olive grove was filled with a quiet reverence. The prophet's teachings had touched the hearts of all who listened, planting seeds of understanding and hope. In the glow of early morning, the crowd began to disperse, carrying with them the timeless wisdom that would echo in their lives long after the prophet's departure. Their spirits were lighter, their minds clearer, and their souls more awake to the profound beauty and mystery of existence. The dawn's gentle light filtered through the branches of the olive grove as the people gathered once more around the prophet. Their faces, illuminated by the soft morning glow, reflected the quiet anticipation that accompanied the arrival of new wisdom. The air was thick with reverence, and the stillness spoke volumes, each heart ready to receive whatever truths the prophet would share this day. A young mother stepped forward, cradling her infant close to her chest. Her eyes shone with the fierce tenderness of one who understood both the joys and the challenges of nurturing new life. "Speak to us of children," she asked softly, her voice carrying the weight of her love and hopes. The prophet regarded her with a profound gentleness and began to speak, inviting them all into a reflection on the sacredness and paradox of parenthood. "Your children are not your children," he began, his tone both tender and resolute. "They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself." With these words, he unveiled a deeper understanding of the relationship between parent and child, one not of possession, but of stewardship and respect for the child's own destiny. The prophet reminded them that though parents give life to their children, they do not own them. Children come through parents, but belong to themselves and to the future. He spoke of the responsibility that rests upon parents to nurture, guide, and support, but not to shape or confine. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, he said, emphasizing the importance of allowing children the freedom to form their own views, beliefs, and identities. He warned against imposing one's own fears, desires, or expectations, encouraging parents to honor the individuality and spirit of each child. The prophet's words painted a picture of parenthood as a sacred trust, an act of love that encourages growth rather than control, liberation rather than limitation. For their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams, he said, reminding the crowd that the future belongs to those yet to come, and the best gift parents can offer is the freedom to find their own path. The crowd listened intently, many nodding, touched by the reminder that love's truest form is respect and liberation. The mother's gaze softened, as if the prophet's words were a balm to both her hopes and her fears. A man with a weathered face then inquired, "What do you say of friendship?" The prophet's eyes brightened, and his voice carried warmth and clarity as he responded. He described friendship as a sacred bond that unites souls beyond the fleeting connections of convenience or circumstance. "Your friend is your needs answered," he said. "He is your field which you sow with love and reap with thanksgiving." The prophet spoke of friends as mirrors, reflecting back one's own soul, and as companions who walk beside us on the journey of life. True friendship, he explained, is built on mutual respect, honesty, and the freedom to be one's authentic self without fear of judgment. He urged the people to cherish their friends not as possessions, but as gifts, to nurture these relationships with care and gratitude. "In the sweetness of friendship, let there be laughter and sharing of pleasures," he said, celebrating the joy and companionship that friendship brings, even as he reminded them that true friends must also respect each other's solitude. Friendship, the prophet revealed, is a delicate balance, an interweaving of togetherness and independence, a dance of closeness and freedom. He invited the people to honor this balance and to treasure those rare souls who truly see and accept us. The gathering grew quieter as the prophet paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. Then a young man stepped forward, his voice trembling with the urgency of a heart seeking clarity. "Tell us of talking," he implored, "for words often fail me, and I am unsure how to speak my truth." The prophet smiled knowingly. He spoke of speech as a powerful instrument, capable of building bridges or walls, healing or wounding. "You talk when you cease to be at peace with your thoughts," he said, cautioning that often words arise from inner turmoil or the desire to be heard and understood. He urged them to speak with intention and integrity, to let their words flow not from fear or anger, but from a place of deep truth and love. "And when you speak, speak not to be heard, but to listen," he counseled, emphasizing that true communication is a two-way current of giving and receiving. The prophet reminded the crowd that silence, too, holds immense value. The silent spaces between words often carry the weight of meaning and connection. "Silence is the sleep that nourishes wisdom," he said, inviting them to embrace quietude as a fertile ground for reflection and understanding. He described how sometimes the most profound communication occurs not through speaking, but through presence, through the unspoken language of compassion, eye contact, and shared stillness. In In this way, the Prophet elevated talking beyond the mere exchange of information, framing it as an art of connection, empathy, and authenticity. As the crowd reflected on these insights, an elder asked about pleasure, a topic often met with ambivalence or guilt. The Prophet's eyes sparkled as he approached this delicate subject with grace and honesty. "You seek in pleasure the release of your sorrow," he began, acknowledging the human yearning to escape pain and find joy. Yet he warned that pleasure pursued for its own sake is like chasing shadows, fleeting and ultimately unsatisfying. True pleasure, he explained, is born from harmony with the soul, a celebration of life's beauty without excess or attachment. Pleasure is a freedom song of the heart, he said, urging the people to embrace it fully but wisely. The Prophet spoke of the sacredness of savoring life's simple delights, the warmth of the sun, the fragrance of flowers, the laughter of children. He encouraged them to find pleasure not in indulgence or avoidance, but in moments of presence and gratitude. He acknowledged the paradox that pleasure and pain are inseparable partners, each giving depth and meaning to the other. To deny pleasure is to deny life itself, but to be ruled by pleasure is to lose oneself in illusion. The people absorbed this balanced view, grateful for a perspective that honored both joy and responsibility. A woman then asked about beauty, seeking to understand how it fits into the spiritual journey. The Prophet's response was poetic and expansive. "Beauty is not in the face. Beauty is a light in the heart," he said. He described beauty as a manifestation of harmony, truth, and goodness that radiates from within. He cautioned against idolizing external appearances or seeking validation through physical beauty alone. True beauty, he explained, is the reflection of a soul that is open, kind, and free. The Prophet invited them to cultivate inner beauty through acts of compassion, courage, and authenticity. He spoke of how beauty awakens the spirit and draws people together, creating a sacred connection that transcends mere form. As the sun climbed higher, casting a golden glow over the gathering, the people felt their hearts lifted by the Prophet's words. Each teaching was a thread woven into the tapestry of their lives, guiding them toward deeper understanding and peace. The olive grove, still and serene, held the echoes of ancient wisdom, a place where the human spirit could rest, grow, and soar. The crowd, now deeply attuned to the rhythm of the Prophet's teachings, awaited his next words beneath the vast sky. The wind whispered softly through the olive branches, as if nature itself leaned in to listen. A thoughtful elder stepped forward, his eyes reflecting years of experience and quiet contemplation. "Tell us of religion," he requested, a weighty question that touched the heart of many. The Prophet's gaze softened, and his voice carried the calm assurance of one who sees beyond surface divisions. "You ask of religion," he said. "Yet what is religion but the path of love and devotion that each soul walks in its own way?" He spoke of how religion is often misunderstood as rigid dogma or division, but at its core, it is the yearning for connection between the human and the divine, between individuals and their deeper selves. He urged them to see religion not as a cage, but as a doorway to freedom. "Religion should not bind you with chains, but set your spirit soaring," he explained, emphasizing that true faith is personal and intimate, not imposed or dictated. The Prophet reminded the people that every faith, every tradition, carries its own language of love, its own way of reaching toward the sacred. Let each one walk the path they know best, he said, warning against judgment or intolerance. For the same light shines through every window, even if the panes are colored differently. He cautioned them not to confuse ritual or doctrine with the living spirit of faith. True religion, he said, is a matter of the heart, expressed through compassion, kindness, and the recognition of the divine spark in all beings. As the people absorbed these words, a young woman, her face radiant with both hope and uncertainty, stepped forward. "What of death?" she asked quietly, a question that stilled the air and touched the deepest fears and mysteries within every soul. The prophet looked upon her with profound compassion and began to unravel the enigma of mortality. "Death is nothing but a moving of the veil," he said, his voice gentle yet filled with power. "It is not an end but a transformation, a passage from one realm to another, where the soul sheds its earthly garments and steps into the light." He described death as a natural and inevitable part of the great cycle of life. Just as the day gives way to night, and the seasons turn in their endless dance, so too must life flow toward its conclusion, not with fear, but with acceptance and grace. "Do not mourn the departed," he counseled, "for their journey continues beyond the sight of mortal eyes." The prophet painted death as a reunion, a return to the source from which all life springs. He invited the people to see death not as a thief, but as a gentle guide leading the soul home. His words brought comfort to many, softening the grip of dread and sorrow that often clings to the thought of death. He reminded them that those who have passed remain part of the living tapestry, their presence felt in memories, love, and the ongoing story of existence. The gathering was silent for a moment, hearts heavy yet lifted by the vision of death as a sacred transformation. Then a man, strong and steadfast, asked about work, a subject that weighed on the minds of many who toiled daily under the sun. The prophet smiled, recognizing the dignity and struggle embedded in honest labor. "Work is love made visible," he declared, revealing the sacredness that lies in even the most humble tasks. "It is the expression of your soul in action, the manifestation of your creative spirit." He spoke of work not merely as a means to an end or a burden to bear, but as a joyful participation in the ongoing creation of life. "When you work, you weave the fabric of the world," he said, urging them to approach their labor with reverence and pride. The prophet reminded them that work is a gift, an opportunity to bring forth beauty, sustenance, and connection. He encouraged them to find meaning in every task, from the artisan's delicate craft to the farmer's patient tending of the soil. Yet he also warned against working solely for wealth or recognition, for such motives narrow the soul and diminish the true value of labor. "Work for love," he advised, "and you will never work alone." As the people contemplated these words, a soft murmur arose, voices reflecting on their own labors, both joyful and burdensome. The prophet's teachings transformed their understanding of work from mere toil to sacred service. Next, a young poet stepped forward, her eyes sparkling with creative fire. "Tell us of crime and punishment," she requested, a subject fraught with fear and moral complexity. The prophet's face grew solemn as he addressed this delicate issue. He spoke of crime not as the essence of a person, but as a rupture, a moment when a soul loses its way or succumbs to pain and confusion. "Crime is a sorrow born from forgetfulness," he said, emphasizing that those who err are still children of life, deserving of compassion as well as justice. The prophet warned against vengeance or harsh condemnation, which only deepen wounds and perpetuate suffering. Instead, he advocated for justice tempered with mercy, healing, and restoration. Punishment is not meant to break, but to teach, he explained, urging them to seek transformation rather than retribution. He spoke of the power of forgiveness, both for the offender and the offended, as a force that frees the spirit and mends the fabric of the community. To forgive is to liberate, he said, inviting the people to embrace the difficult but redemptive path of mercy. The crowd was moved by this vision of justice as a sacred process, a chance to restore balance and dignity rather than simply to punish. The prophet's words sowed seeds of hope for a more compassionate and understanding society. Finally, a woman cloaked in simple garments asked, "What of self-knowledge? How shall we know ourselves truly?" The prophet's eyes shone with profound wisdom as he spoke of the eternal journey inward. "Know thyself," he said, echoing ancient wisdom, "for within you lies the universe." He described self-knowledge as the foundation of all growth, the path to freedom and peace. To know oneself is to see the divine spark within, to recognize both shadow and light. The prophet urged them to look beyond the masks and roles imposed by society, to dive deep into the wellspring of their own being. "The soul is vast and mysterious," he said, "but only by facing your own depths can you find true wholeness." He spoke of the courage required to confront one's fears, desires, and imperfections, and of the liberation that comes from honest self-awareness. "Do not fear your darkness," he advised, "for it is the shadow that shapes the light." The people felt a stirring within, a call to embark on the inward journey that the prophet so eloquently described. The olive grove seemed to pulse with the energy of transformation, a sacred space where the seeds of awakening were planted. As the day waned, the prophet's teachings left the crowd enriched, challenged, and inspired. Each word was a gift, an invitation to live with greater love, wisdom, and courage. The gathering dispersed slowly, carrying the prophet's wisdom like a flame into their lives, ready to kindle new understanding in their hearts and communities. As the sun dipped low beyond the hills, casting a golden glow over the olive grove, the prophet's voice grew softer, yet carried a timeless weight. The people gathered close, sensing the nearing close of his discourse, craving the final gifts of wisdom he had to offer. They longed to drink deeply from the well of his insight before the moment of parting came. A mother holding a small child approached gently and asked, "Speak to us of children. What is the meaning of their arrival, their place in this vast journey?" The prophet smiled warmly, his eyes reflecting the innocence and mystery embodied in the question. "Your children are not your children," he began, his words unfolding like a gentle melody. "They come through you, but are not from you. They belong to the future, to the unseen and unknowable days yet to dawn. You may give them your love and your care, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the realm of tomorrow." He spoke of the sacred responsibility of parenting, which is not to mold or possess, but to nurture and support the blossoming of each unique spirit. "Your children are the arrows of life sent forth to pierce the veil of the future," he said. "Guide them with gentle hands, but let their flight be free." The people listened, touched by the vision of children as sacred messengers of what is yet to come, each carrying within them the promise of possibility and change. The prophet then turned his gaze toward the horizon and spoke of friendship, that mysterious and profound bond that knits souls together beyond blood or obligation. Friendship is a sheltering tree, he said, whose roots entwine the hearts of those who seek solace and truth. He described friendship as a mirror reflecting our own selves back to us, a companion through joy and sorrow, strength and vulnerability. In friendship, you find a love that is chosen and cherished, not demanded or owed, he said. The prophet urged the people to honor their friends, to cultivate these sacred connections with care and gratitude. As twilight deepened, the topic shifted to love itself, the central force around which all life revolves. A young man, his heart aflame with longing, asked, "Tell us of love. How shall we understand its power and pain?" The prophet's voice became a song, a dance of light and shadow. Love gives naught but itself, and takes naught but from itself. Love possesses not, nor would it be possessed, for love is sufficient unto love. He spoke of love's paradoxical nature, the joy and the suffering, the unity and the solitude it brings. When love beckons you, follow him, though his ways are hard and steep, he advised. For love requires courage and surrender. It demands that we give freely, without expectations, that we open ourselves fully and risk being wounded. Yet through this vulnerability, the prophet explained, love leads to the highest expression of life, the deep connection that transcends separation and reveals the divine. Love knows not its own depth until the hour of separation, he said, reminding them that love's true measure is often tested through loss and longing. The crowd was moved to tears, feeling the tender truth of love's fierce beauty and its power to transform and heal. They understood that love is not merely a fleeting feeling, but a sacred force shaping the very essence of existence. Turning now to joy and sorrow, the prophet spoke of their inseparable dance, twin threads woven into the fabric of the human heart. Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, he said. The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. He encouraged them to embrace both emotions fully, to honor sorrow as the pathway to deeper joy rather than deny or flee from it. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed, he said. Life's richest meaning arises from the harmony of these opposites. As night settled, the prophet's words took on a timeless resonance, touching the eternal mysteries of existence. He spoke of the sacredness in every moment, the beauty of the ordinary, the wonder in the mundane. Say not, I have found the truth, but rather I have found a truth, he said, inviting the people to hold their beliefs lightly and remain open to growth and change. He urged them to live with humility, curiosity, and awe, recognizing that the journey itself is sacred. Finally, as stars began to pepper the darkening sky, the prophet prepared to leave. His heart was full, his mission nearly complete. Yet before departing, he shared a parting blessing, a gift to carry in the days and years ahead. Go now, and live with courage and compassion, he said. Speak your truth, but listen with an open heart. Serve others without expectation, and seek always the light within yourself. He reminded them that the teachings he had offered were not rules to obey, but seeds to nurture, seeds that would grow and blossom differently in every heart. The true prophet, he said, dwells not in words alone, but in the living spirit that moves through all things. The people rose slowly, touched and transformed, their souls ignited with new hope and understanding. They knew their lives would never be the same, for they had glimpsed a deeper wisdom, a vision of unity and love that transcends fear and separation. As the prophet vanished into the twilight, the olive grove stood silent, holding the sacred echo of his presence. The teachings lingered like a gentle breeze, whispering to all who would listen, inviting them to live more fully, love more deeply, and walk the path of the soul with courage and grace. As we reach the end of our journey through the prophet, it becomes clear why this book has resonated so deeply with readers around the world for over a century. Kahlil Gibran's poetic meditation on life's fundamental experiences, love, joy and sorrow, freedom, work, and death, offers timeless wisdom wrapped in simple, yet profound language. It invites us not just to read, but to reflect, to feel, and to grow. What makes the prophet enduring is its universal appeal across cultures, ages, and beliefs. Gibran does not dictate answers. Instead, he gently opens doors to the mysteries of existence, encouraging each of us to find our own truths. His teachings are less about rules and more about awakening the soul's inner light, embracing the full spectrum of human experience with compassion and courage. In a world that often feels fragmented and fast-paced, the prophet reminds us to slow down, to listen to ourselves, to others, and to the rhythms of life itself. It teaches that joy and sorrow are intertwined, that love demands vulnerability, and that true freedom lies in understanding our connection to all things. The impact of this work goes far beyond its pages. It has inspired artists, thinkers, and seekers, becoming a spiritual touchstone for millions. Its verses have been quoted in countless ceremonies, sermons, and moments of personal transformation, demonstrating the power of poetry to heal and unite. As we carry Gibran's words with us, may we be reminded to live deliberately, to love deeply, to work with meaning, and to face life's inevitable challenges with grace. The Prophet is more than a book. It is a companion on the journey of becoming truly human. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the Prophet. If you found value in this summary, please consider subscribing to Reading Hours for more immersive journeys through literature's greatest works. Until next time, may your path be filled with wisdom and your heart with peace.